Well, I'd like to welcome Jamey Schreier to the Private Practice Elevation Podcast. How are you doing today, Jamey?
I'm doing fine, Daniel. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, excited to just learn a little bit more from someone I have never met you before, but I'm excited to talk to you. And this is kind of the most fun part of having a podcast is I get to meet amazing people doing amazing work, just experts all over the world. So I'm excited to just hear a little bit more about you and yeah, just the skills and the coaching prowess that you carry. But before we get into all all that good stuff that you have to offer, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and tell us how you got started doing what you're doing now. What kind of led you to this place?
Yeah. So, as Jamie Schreier. I own CEO of Practice Freedom U, which is a business coaching and training company to help practice owners, basically treat less, earn more, and create really an amazing life. And to me, that's always the most important thing is I want to be able to do what I want to do. And when I started business, like most people, I got to make my degree. Bounced around a little bit and I went into practice all excited, bright eyed, bushy tailed. My fiance was my front desk person. She's my wife now, Colleen. And I was the doctor and it was great, right? I mean, first year and a half, the honeymoon phase, if you will, was fantastic. And then as we started to grow, mostly by word of mouth and stuff like that, I noticed that things became a little bit more difficult. Um, the time that I once had, be able to focus on my clients and patient care, started to get eaten up by just other things, hiring people. Daniel, I made the assumption that everyone just works like I do. Everyone thinks like I do. You know what? They don't.
No.
They don't have the same work ethic necessarily. They don't actually stay later if someone needs to be seen. They leave. Like, sorry, I got to leave. They don't accommodate the way we as business owners, I guess, do. So I just started learning that there's a lot of different types of people out there, and I really didn't have time or the know-how to know how to track the right people. I just assumed that whatever they told me was the truth. And then I went back to do what I do. And, they're running my front desk and helping me with billing or some other types of things. And, I realized that there was a lot of problems. And I felt that I was doing a fair amount of time trying to fix problems. So I
Hmm.
was not only doing my job as the primary therapist, but I started to do a little bit of everyone else's job.
Right.
And the whole point was actually to hire them not to do some of these things. So, the stress started to build. I got overwhelmed. I started feeling like I describe it in my book that I wrote several years ago. The Practice Freedom Method was a pit in my stomach. And I just walked around with this pit and it started to get worse over the years. And my anxiety started to go. I never really had, a ton of anxiety. And it affected my home life. It affected my relationship with my wife and eventually my kids. And one day we went to the beach for a quick getaway, and I was coming home, and I got a phone call. It was my father-in-law, and he said, "Jamey, I think your place is on fire." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm watching the TV, and your building is on fire."
What?
And Daniel, without skipping a beat, this is how bad it was. My wife is one to answer the phone, and I looked at her. I said, "Good. I hope it's my suite, and I hope it burns to the ground."
Oh man.
I mean, who would want their business to burn to the ground? But I kind
Mm,
of look at it like, I live in the Northeast and, it's like a snow day. The
yeah.
greatest day in the world is when it snows and you have an unexpected day off as a kid. You're like, this is the most exciting thing. Well, guess what? This was on a Sunday. I didn't have work on Monday or
Hmm.
Tuesday or for the next 4 months. So it was a reset button,
Yeah.
but I never felt so relieved because I was done. I'm ready to give up this whole thing. So I decided not to. I said, you know what? After several weeks of just exploring and thinking and just contemplating, I said, I'm not going to give up. Daniel, I don't know what the hell I'm doing in business. I got a big ego. I'm smart, but I don't know business because I've never been taught. So
Right.
instead, I said, I'm going to invest the time and the money, and I'm actually going to learn this thing, or I'm going to die trying. Like literally, I will do anything. And that's when I started investing in programs and courses and coaches of how to do it. And I made a lot of mistakes, but I did also some things correctly. So 9 years later, after that fire, 9 years later, 2013, I created a practice, not a huge practice, about 1.4 million. I had 12 staff people, 12, 13 staff people,
Hmm.
and I wasn't treating anymore by choice. My business was growing, my team was amazing, and I worked about 5 hours a week.
Wow.
And I'm like, now I have the life that I've always wanted.
Yeah.
So I started sharing my story. People reached out and said, can you coach me? I didn't anticipate going into coaching, but they reached out. I started coaching and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing ever since. Ended up selling my practice a few years ago. And now I just share and help other people to create a business that fulfills their life and what they want. Because that's what I believe what it's about. Yes, we want
Yeah.
to help people, but the number one person we have to help is ourselves. Because if we're overwhelmed, we're stressed out, we're not any good to anyone.
Right.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. I love it. Wow. I was not expecting you to say that it was your building on fire. I thought that that was going to be like an analogy or something like that. But literally, it was on
I
fire. Oh
got the
my
pictures to
goodness.
prove it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. But the one thing I really love, why I love to hear people's stories is because it always is so amazing to see how, when somebody kind of finds what they love to do and just the path that they've taken, and how all of those things, while they were challenges along the way, I'm sure, and some dark moments, have kind of led you to this place now where it sounds like you're doing something that you really love, and everything was really preparing you for, what you're doing now. So that's just awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you're not in the moment, of course, but those dark moments, those moments where you're being truly challenged. And there's so many books written about it, with courage and grit and all these other things, but everybody has that commonality. And I think too many times we shy away from kind of going into that deeper, dark place. But that's where growth happens. That's where
Yeah.
true transformation happens. And I think, as practice owners, we're here to help other people. But the person we have to help and focus on the most is the person that we put aside, and that's ourselves. We
Yeah.
burn ourselves out by working a ton of hours, and hard work is a part of this. But if you just continue to do it year after year, eventually you're going to get worn down. And now you're not good to anyone, especially your own family, who are supposedly doing this for.
Right.
Um, but, that's what I felt, Daniel. I felt like I was giving the best of myself to my patients and to my staff. But the people that were actually even more important was my family. I came home exhausted.
Right.
I had nothing left. My patience was zero. I gave everything I had. And, you go through that a few years and you start to question yourself, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
Um, so, that's kind of what really hits home for me. And, I share this story and people resonate, or I find out it resonates with other people because we're all the same, no matter what profession we're in. I love the allied health world. So whether it's mental health therapists, psychotherapists, physical therapists, pediatrics, we're all in that. We went to school, we learned our craft, we
Hmm.
have a passion for helping others. If we just wanted to make money, we'd go on Wall Street, but there was something more we wanted. But then we got into the business of what we do. And
Yeah.
that's where the problems happen, because the business of what we do is very different than just being talented in what you do.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
I found the hard way.
Yeah, and I think so many people find that the hard way, and that it definitely resonates with me. It resonates too. I think I'm also thinking about my wife as she's building her private practice, and she's kind of in a state of scaling now and taking on more things. And I could see just some of the stress as she's trying to get those systems in place and things for scaling, and some of that's unexpected too, because we step into these things and like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, or this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do. You take on these responsibilities for growth, and then you realize, oh, okay, I have some things I need to learn or things I need to put in place, otherwise,
Yeah.
burnout could be coming for me soon.
Burnout's huge. I think the biggest emotion that we have to get under control is the emotion of guilt, the
Mhm.
emotion of feeling bad. I can't tell you how many times, and I know I've told this to myself, but I didn't realize it's just a common thing, that just because of who we are as a profession, and because we're in this I want to help people world,
Yeah.
we feel bad and we think the answer is for us to work harder. The answer is
Hmm.
to do more and more for our staff, like sometimes actually do it for them, which of course is really micromanaging that they don't want, but we're doing it because we feel guilty. Like
Yeah.
the first thing I challenge people on is reducing their schedule, reducing their treatment schedule. I
Mm.
don't know if that's the first thing I focus. Usually it's on reducing some of the admin, but at some point, reduce your schedule because there are other talented people that can do it, especially if they had you to mentor them. But the thing I hear all the time, Daniel, is, but I feel bad. I feel guilty. I don't want to let go.
Hmm.
And I was like, but you want to help them. And nobody wants, I mean, when you're there, you're the owner. I don't care what you think. You're not their friend. You're the owner. And they're never going to operate the same if you're there hovering.
Yeah.
So this idea of letting go and then incorporating your experience into mentoring and teaching them through whatever systems or process or training, whatever it is, um, allows you to grow and allows you to do it exponentially without sacrificing everything who you are. Actually,
Right.
the opposite happens. So that guilt, like I feel guilty, I feel bad. It's something that, as you know, people have told me so many times. I think above anything, I think that mentality right there is a huge resistance point
Yeah.
to many allied health, mental health professionals.
Yeah. And I think that that's a good segue into what we were kind of discussing before we hit record here. We started talking about emotional intelligence and sort of the internal things that are going on for you as a business owner, and how, some of those things can get in the way, or if maybe mindset shifts happen, how that can really help you and your success. So why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit more about how you get started with coaching your clients through emotional intelligence. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for your private practice?
Sure. Well, just to kind of give a kind of an overview here, emotional intelligence, or EQ, is very different than IQ. IQ is something that you're pretty much born with. After maybe 12 years, your IQ is what it is. It can develop, but it is what it is. You're not going to make drastic changes. Your
Mhm.
intelligence is what your intelligence is. However, EQ is dynamic. It actually can go up, it can go down. And emotional intelligence is simply, how does one handle their own emotion? I
Mhm.
mean, it sounds simple enough, but think
Yeah.
about it. We're all emotional beings, and we've all been in situations. My daughter, I always use her as an example because she's 16-year-old daughter. Um, Emotional I don't know if the intelligence part's there, but the emotion sure is there. And that emotion is there pretty much every hour on the hour. It could change
Mhm.
drastically, right? And how she handles her own emotions is a big determinant on how whatever situation she's dealing with, people that she's dealing with.
Yeah.
So we've all had bad days. And we've all had bad days where we show up not as our best self, and we show up maybe talking to our staff or talking to our patient, and it just doesn't go well, right? There's confusion, we upset them or they upset us even worse, or whatever the case is. And then that scenario causes even more problems. Well, that is more important than how much you actually know about the craft that you do, because we are in the people business,
Mhm.
and people want you to know, they want to know how much you actually care about them and care about their well-being, more than how much you know, because frankly, you already are one of the smartest people on the planet. You've already done all that schooling. But how you understand your own stuff, how you understand your own triggers, that's the determinant of your success, of your happiness, of your financial success. I mean, there's all research that already supports all of that. So as business owners, as CEOs, as leaders, our job is to recognize, first of all, what triggers us. We all have triggers. I have triggers. I have pet peeves. The more I became understanding what those are, like I like being on time, right? You probably strike me as someone being on time.
Yeah, I'm usually the early guy. If you're not early, then you're late.
Right, right. If you're not early, then you're late. So working with people that don't equally value that triggers me. It really just pisses me off.
Mhm.
And as I become to recognize that about myself, I became to understand better how to surround myself with people that believe in my value of being on time, not showing up 10 minutes late, or staying at lunch later, or whatever that case is. Well, that has allowed me to recognize the people that I should hire, because there's
Hmm.
certain people that value and certain people that don't. It allows me to have conversations with my clients, and say, look, if someone is just chronically late, I'll have a conversation with them, because I know that bothers me, versus not having that conversation and just holding the resentment in
Yeah.
until eventually it comes out. I mean, it's a simple example, but we all have those triggers. And in the first component of emotional intelligence, the first component is self-awareness, understanding ourself and what triggers us. When you're able to understand you better, you're able to see other people better and
Mhm.
recognize things in other people. And I'm sure you, like me, has these neighbors that probably have drama follow them. We know those people, they could be working for us, hopefully not, but they just have drama. There's always drama with them.
Right.
And it's almost like you want to go to them, Daniel, and you say, don't you actually see you cause all of this? They don't. That's what self-awareness is really just understanding who, not trying to change who you are. It's just to
Yeah.
understand who you are. And
Yeah.
the better you are at doing that, then the next component is, what kind of strategies do you have to manage those moments when they happen? Um, you start to see things around you change and improve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know that one thing, what was I going to say? I kind of lost my train of thought there. No, I see what you're saying about self-awareness, because I know that for myself as a business owner, I think the greatest growth of my life has been just in leading a team and owning a business. Like there's so much that kind of comes to the surface when you're kind of put through the ringer of things I don't know how to run a business. I am learning every day still, how to run a business. But there's stuff that comes up, stuff with money, stuff with uh, interactions with your team, or like you said, like if there's a value, for me, like, yeah, being on time. Also, one of our values at private practice elevation is we do what we say we're going to do. So if someone on my team says, oh, Daniel, I'm going to reach out to that client, and then it doesn't happen, that for me, like, oh, that I need you to do that, so it's having those values in place and kind of doing that on my own practice to understand that, and being self-aware too helps me then have that conversation when somebody doesn't follow up. We can kind of point back to say, hey, the values of this company, and one of them is, we are honest about what we're going to do. We do what we say we're going to do. So what needs to happen in order for you to kind of fulfill on that?
Yeah, that's huge. So as an exercise, and people that are listening, an exercise is, and I take this through all of our clients, is simply write down what pisses you off, what triggers you, what's your pet peeves. We all have them. Don't feel bad about having it. It's who you
Right.
are.
Yeah.
The key is to recognize it, and then try not to put yourself in a situation when you are at a high emotional state. There's a great saying, when emotions are high, intelligence is low,
Mm,
right? So when your emotions are high, you'll say things and do things that you wouldn't normally do because you're not in a rational state, right? It's
yeah.
that fight or flight response. Well, imagine that all of a sudden you're going into a one-on-one meeting with one of your staff people, and right before that, you look at the bank account, and one of your payments or whatever, one of your things didn't go through, and now you're almost in the red. And darn well that's a trigger for
Yeah.
you. You better have some management strategies right then and there, whether it's taking a deep breath, or just meditation, or taking a walk outside before that meeting. If not, you will bring that emotion into that meeting,
Yeah.
and that meeting will not go well.
Nope.
I promise you. So
I've had that
recognize,
experience before. I've had
we've all had it.
not that exact one, but I know not to check my email before going into meetings, and I've set times to check my email
Yeah.
because I just want to jump into and like fix whatever if a client reaches out or if they're not happy with a certain thing that happened. like you said, I don't want to take that into something else that I've been preparing for. And it's not really, has nothing to do with that meeting.
Yeah, and this is where, like, I do a lot of talks around time management, and we can touch on that right now too. Time management, like just even what you said, that is so big. Most of us are so connected to our phone and to our computers that we are operating on someone else's schedule. When
Right.
someone sends you an email, they want you to open it. That's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
You need to protect yourself, because I find myself doing that too. Sometimes, as much as the protections I have is, hey, I'm only going to check email first thing in the morning and then I'm going to check it here. All of a sudden, I check an email right before I'm going on this. And now the email that came through, which is pissing me off, is now going to affect me showing up here to this.
Right.
And I'm like you, I do not check anything like that, because I want to show up here full. I want to show up here totally mentally present with you in the right emotion, in that helpful, positive, giving thing. So it was interesting because when I was a treating therapist, I found myself never fully present with some of my patients. Like, I'd be listening to the front desk of how they're butchering the phone call and the cancellation, or doing something stupid, or whatever the case is. Or I'm listening to another therapist of what they're saying to a patient. I'm just like, oh my God. So I'm never like fully present with my own clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I created a simple strategy. And the strategy was the 10-second pause. So right before I went into the room of a patient, especially a new patient, those were even bigger, a new patient, I would just, no matter what was going on, and I was racing all over the place. I had a caseload. I was dealing with everything else. I just paused, closed my eyes, and I said, what do I appreciate about this person? That was it. And what that helped me do was reset. First of all, I got out of my own head,
Yeah.
and I got into their world. What do I appreciate about them? Hey, they have a problem and they're taking action. They're taking ownership. Hey, they chose us. I mean, we were dealing with physical issues here as a physical therapy company. Man, that's pretty cool. They chose us. They could have chose a lot of things. They could have chose more medications. They could have chose surgery. They could have chose other professions. They chose us. And that immediately helps me dial in and then walk in and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, Jamey Schreier here. So nice to see you.
I
Like,
love that. Yeah.
just that one little thing changed that whole dynamic and relationship. And of course, when you do that, they have a good experience. They refer others and all that type of good stuff.
Yeah.
So step one, understand what your triggers, what really ticks you off. Step two, what are some of the things you can do when they are triggered to help you? I mean, there's tons of ideas. A great book, a great resource is called Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Bradbury. It's just like the Bible of emotional intelligence. Really simple, easy to read, lots of possibilities of strategies. But deep breathing is always good, and pausing or saying an affirmation or something. So those are all personal. That's where it starts. Then when you start getting good at recognizing you, what happens here, Daniel, is you start to see others much, much clearer. You get to see other people. So that's what, component number 3 is social awareness, is how do you recognize these emotions in other people, which is a pretty good talent to have, especially if you're building a business and you're hiring people. You want to recognize other people and how they are coming off. I will not hire anyone that doesn't have a high emotional intelligence. Now, you can have them take a quiz. Actually, that book, the Emotional Intelligence 2.0, actually has a little quiz in the book. So you can take it. I took it. Mine was really low when I first took it several years ago. I've worked a lot on improving it. My life became better. My business became better. Income, everything became better. Lo and behold, when I retook the quiz, my EQ was higher. So it did correlate.
Yeah.
So you can certainly have them take the quiz, but as you just become better at just understanding people, you don't need to think, what their EQ is right away. You know what type of person they are. And that's a really great skill. And it is a skill. You can learn that. So the more you recognize yourself, the more you start looking in others, right? What are they about? What triggers them? How do they show up in different situations? right? What happens when they get stressed? Imagine that you're having a conversation with one of your staff. I mean, imagine the conversation when you recognize what triggers them and you can now talk to them. You could say,
Yeah.
hey, I sense that you're a little preoccupied. I sense that you're really stressed right now. What's going on? Versus what the old Jamey used to do. It's all about me. So I would jump to conclusions like somehow they were trying to be lazy or sabotage the work or not care about
Right.
patients, or only
Yeah.
care about money, or all these other stories and narratives we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we show up to a conversation with that in our brain
Yeah.
versus no, it's probably something else.
Yeah.
So you start to recognize those in others, which is really powerful.
Yeah, and then I think that helps you kind of come to your, your employees, your clinicians in a way that gives them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm sure, we could all appreciate, like, we don't want to be on the defensive when our boss approaches us and trying to prove that, we're not trying to do something wrong, but like, oh, there's actually this whole other thing going on. And I've certainly had that with my own team. Just my team, we kind of call ourselves the PPE family because we're on calls, we're all over the country and all over the world. And so our way of connecting is through Zoom. But we do know enough about each other and our lives and things that are going on. And, so many times they're so consistent and trustworthy. And then all of a sudden, oh, where's our developer? We haven't heard from him. And I kind of like you mentioned, like I can first have those narratives like, well, he's just flaking out, because that's happened to me in the past. I've had those experiences with people.
Yeah.
They're gone for days and we've got a project on. Where are you? And there wasn't an emergency, but I've also hired some people. We've got like a really good history, so that when that happens now, maybe that thought might be a shorter thought of like, oh, he's flaking out. Like, no, they're trustworthy. They're consistent. There's something going on here, so that when I can approach that situation and find out, oh, there's we have some developers in the Philippines, like, oh, there was actually a typhoon and our power was out, we needed to move, stuff like that happens, which you want to the last thing you need when your power is out, or you're struggling with something with your family, is for your boss to come at you, where were you, and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, is because, likewise, we have people all over the world working for us. We have a couple people in the Philippines, and this just happened, right? So, one of our social media people are helping us out, and the stuff he's supposed to be doing just wasn't done. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? Through WhatsApp, nothing. And I'm like, man, I must have misread him.
Mm.
This is not the person I was working with the last several months. And then he finally reached out, and I was in that moment, I was trying to be like, Jamey, don't tell yourself stories.
Yeah.
This is a good person, may not be the right fit. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But don't get worked up, because that's going to make it worse. So, he finally said, he goes, look, I had a couple personal things, my aunt, something happened and passed away or whatever. I had some other personal things in my life. And I said, hey, I totally understand, in the future, could you just let me know beforehand so I don't jump to conclusions?
Right.
Because I was on the phone finding someone else.
Mm.
And this person is good and they are talented. So then once he said, absolutely, just give me a few days. And he came back a few days later, and I said, look, and this is not the Jamey that would have responded like this, by the way, back in the day. I said, look, things happen to all of us. We're human beings. I go, but we have to agree that A, you need to let me know what's going on, because my first focus here is to make sure we do what we say we're going to do, just like one of your values are. So if you're not doing this, then we're not showing up for our clients, or we're not, doing the things that we have to do to continue to create content to people. I said, can we agree to that? He said, yes. I said, then we're all good. And I let it go.
Yeah.
I won't keep it around. The old Jamey would keep it around and bring it up and bring it up. Just a little dig, just a little dig. I just let it go. Now, if someone says, well, Jamey, what if he does it again? I go, that's cool. He won't work for me anymore. But I don't have a bad emotion towards it.
Right.
it's just a matter of fact. It's like, that's fine because we
Yeah.
don't have the same value system.
Hmm.
So when you start elevating just your whole way of just seeing things and handling your own emotions, think about it. It's all about you and how you handle things. Everything
Yeah.
you're doing. How do you get better at doing that? You asked me a question at the beginning. How do you work with your clients and all that? I tell them, I said, you know, how do you handle yourself under stress will determine the success you have, not just
Mhm.
financial success. Look, you as well as I do, you're in Atlanta, I'm in the DC area. I know a lot of wealthy people. I mean, make a lot of money and they are miserable. They
Mm.
work 80 hours a week, lawyers or whatever. They make a ton and they're miserable. I
Yeah.
don't want that. I want to
Right.
have the lifestyle I want. I want to have the time and the freedom to choose what I do with who and where I want to go, but also have money too.
Hmm.
So, you and I were talking about in our profession, especially in the mental health, or physical therapists the same way, pediatrics, whatever, we all feel guilty. We all have this guilt, of we can't be successful. We can't be truly happy in our business. We have to sacrifice. Well, you keep sacrificing you're giving less and less to people,
Right.
which is the opposite of helping people.
Hmm.
So, this area around EQ, and the final component besides self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, is basically relationship. Is so understanding other people, how do you then help develop relationships with people? See, this is the part that people sometimes have difficulty with, because if you don't know how to develop relationships with people, you're going to have a tough time building a network of people
Yeah.
to generate referrals,
Hmm.
right? You and I were talking about, like, SEO and some other things. That's important. That's all showing people how you are in the world and what you can help people. But you know what? Most of us are just in small communities. If you're able to connect with people, you're going to generate tons of referrals and opportunities. But if you don't know how to speak to them, if you're more worried about how you come off or what, then you're not going to want to speak to people. You're not going to
Hmm.
put yourself out there. You're not going to develop your referral network, and you're going to have a hard time building and growing your business.
Yeah.
So raising your EQ is also helping you have relationships and collaborating and supporting with other people in your community. Um, and it doesn't cost anything. It's just a skill that takes practice. But when you do it, your business starts to explode. I mean, what we're doing right now, this
Right.
is a part of, the relationship marketing strategy. Connect with people that have influence over people you work with that are cool,
Hmm.
that want to work with you. You could have said, Jamie, I don't want to have you on. Okay, I don't care. I mean, I'm sure people have said that to you, or you said it to people. That's fine. But I don't stop doing it.
Right.
I don't take it personally. You're probably
Hmm.
busy, or you have a 6-week, 6-month waiting list, or whatever the case is. So it's EQ is a foundation of how you actually hire, have conversations with your staff, work with your patients, work in building your audience, your referral relationships. It's the foundation of all of it, because it's how you show up. And
Yeah.
that's why I've gotten more and more into that. I didn't know anything about this until I started learning it when I was working with other coaches and stuff. It's just so powerful, and it just shows up everywhere. Oh, and by the
Yeah.
way, it shows up a heck of a lot in your personal life too.
Oh, yes. We could do a whole other episode on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally, it totally does. Yeah, and kind of back to what you were talking about, with like the relationship building as well, and just even thinking about my own journey. Um, like I said, like I love doing the podcast because I get to talk to cool people. But I know a lot of people when they're starting a podcast, it's like, well, who am I to have people on my show? And yeah, I had some of those feelings, and I continue to reframe that to what I just said, talking to cool people. It's not that big a deal. Like we're creating platforms, and just I love just meeting people. I love hearing the expertise that they carry. And you just never know who you're going to meet or who's going to send business your way later on. That certainly happens, but that's not really like the main reason why I have someone like you on. You might not send somebody my way. You might send somebody my way. Either way, but we're just we're all doing great work. And so it's just fun to connect with people. And it all just kind of works out in the end. But yes, emotional intelligence is such a strong starting point. And I think I'm kind of coming away from this relationship with that self-awareness piece, like you mentioned, like that's really where it starts, is just kind of paying attention to what's going on inside and how you're feeling, and not carrying that into all these things that you're
Yeah.
saying.
One thing that you said, which I think is really important for especially people that are listening, is you said the self-talk, right? Who am I to do a podcast? I'm not
Right.
Gary Vanderchuck. I'm not the who am I? I'm just little dude in Atlanta. I'm just,
Right.
it's who are you not to do it? I mean,
Hmm.
you are connecting with really cool people that have experiences, and you're really good at drawing out and asking questions on behalf of the people that you're representing. So it's selfish for you not to do it. And I
Hmm.
love that reframe, because so many of us have those fears and worries, which again, those are triggers. We
Hmm.
have those fears and worries, and those fears or worries keep us small.
Yeah.
You don't have to build, 100 group practices or whatever, but you don't want to stay small forever. You want to expand, whatever the expand means. So it's a lot of this. How do we handle our own negative self-talk? Daniel, that's what this whole thing is about. The
Hmm.
strategy, yes, there are strategies, there's our principles around marketing and financials and systems and business and yeah, all that stuff. But that stuff is plentiful. The difference between the people that actually are successful in our businesses are the ones that are able to handle their own self-talk and to keep moving forward and have the courage and have the grit
Hmm.
in the deepest, darkest places. Because you
Yeah.
come on the other side 100 times better. And that's what's not easy. I always
Right.
say, I go, look, this isn't easy. It's straightforward of what you need to do, but it ain't easy to
Hmm.
do it because you got to get over the number one thing. And that's right between your ears. And if you
Yep.
embrace that, man, this could be so much fun and so rewarding.
Yeah. Love it, Jamie. And I think that's a great place to stop our conversation. I know that we can kind of keep talking about this stuff forever. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on. Why don't you just tell folks how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you online?
Yeah, so one of the things that people ask, what can I do? What's the next step? Is I created a quiz, a practice quiz, and we'll provide the link to the quiz. The quiz is eye-opening because I'm going to ask you questions on 7 different categories. It's only going to take you a few minutes to fill out, but once you do, you'll get a sense of where you are. Businesses are very predictable. Certain revenue levels equal certain problems in the business. It doesn't matter whether you're mental health, PT, OT, whatever. They are tried and true principles. So when you take the quiz, you're going to get a score. And then what I'm going to provide you is different resources and tips and help of what you need to focus on in that. So that's the best place to go is a Practice Freedom U, practice quiz. But you'll have the link to that.
Yep.
Other than that, you want to reach out to me, you can certainly do so. My website is practicefreedomu.com, the letter U. I'm very active on social media, Jamey Schreier, at Jamey Schreier, LinkedIn. I'm very active there. But yeah, you can always get in touch with me. And I put out, like you, I put out tons and tons of free content. I would say 95% of the stuff I put out there is free, because I just want people to use it and engage it and enjoy it. And like you, if you help enough people, people typically reach out and they want additional help, and that's how we get referrals and do our thing.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we'll have all those links in the show notes for this episode. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Jamie.
Appreciate it, Daniel. Thank you.